Welcome back. Today we're going to build a simple application, a working application that is a login, viewing of records, adding and updating as well as deleting records. So it's basically a full-blown application but in a small scale. So what we'll be doing first is we need a database. So if you're familiar with databases, especially Microsoft Access, you have a sample database called Northwind. Okay, so we can download that one. But since in this application we'll be using Delphi and MySQL, we will try to look for a Northwind equivalent in MySQL. So for me, what I did is I just want to look for Northwind MySQL. So this is the first, this is the keyword that I got, and then the first result gives you a link to GitHub. So you can download this one as a zip, but you only basically need two fields. Once you have downloaded it, unzip it, and then you have the MyWin master. In this folder, what you will need to import this in MySQL are just these two. You need the first one, northwind.sql. This contains the structure within the database and the corresponding tables and fields. And then you import again northwind-data.sql, wherein you can see the data or the records already in every table. So I have here my local database running using my PHP MyAdmin. To import it, just go to import and then select browse, do northwind.sql first, open, and then click on go. Once it's done, you will see here the Northwind is already created, and you can see a lot of tables under Northwind. Import the second SQL file and then click go again, and then you will notice once you click customers, you will now have the records. So we will utilize this table for us to display. Okay, but first we'll make the application as simple as possible so that it would be much easier for us to what do you call this? So that it would be easier for you to understand. So basically, I'll be building a connection, okay, a login screen, okay, and then a viewing of records with add, edit, delete functions. In this case, the employees here doesn't have any actually a field for us to log in. Okay, so there's no way for us to utilize some privileges. Privilege, let's see. This privileges is for the order processing, so I'm not so sure if we could utilize that. But let's see. Let's see if we can look for, or probably we'll just create a table intended for us to log in, just for the purposes of creating. Or we can probably add a field in this case. Let's see. We have the first name. We do not have a password field. So we need to alter the table. That might not be. We can add a new field. Let's see. Let's have username This is under employee. We'll just use bar car. Let's make it 15. Default none. Okay, save. Then another one. We'll add another field called password. Let's do bar car. Let's say 15 as well. And then save. Okay. So under employees, we now have a new field called username and password. In this case, we'll just insert a record or a value directly into this account. So he has a username, web page, username, password. We'll have, just use the name Nancy there, the first name Nancy. Just copy and paste this one, and then let's have admin as the password. Alright, go. Success, update, successful. Okay, that's the username. Alright. So in this case, what we're trying to take advantage of is we'll try to utilize the employee table in our application. So we are trying to establish a connection. We'll build a login screen for our module, and then after that we're going to view records, view these records, add records, add new records, edit records, and delete records. Alright, let's start. So let me first work on connection settings. So for the connection settings, it's important that since we're going to use MySQL, and for your information, I am not using any data aware controls for this matter, for this tutorial. So what we'll be using are MySQL component under MyDAC. You see this one. So you can apply other components for that matter, but in this case we are going to use what do you call this, MyDAC components. So let me just first save this project. So let me see, my add, edit, delete. The first unit that I'm going to serve would be the login form. Okay, so and then the project, let's just say add, edit, delete. Okay, the login, let me rename this one to FRM login. Okay, so I do not want to resize this form, so I set the border style to single. I do not have to maximize button, so what I have would be the minimize and the close button on screen. So I cannot resize the form, and I have only the minimize and close button. So this is the login screen for me. Then I want to make sure that every time this form is run, or every time the application starts, when you run it, it is positioned at the center. So for you to do that is you look at the position property of the form, and then you have a lot of options there. So you can select desktop center. So every time you run, let's see if this will work. Oh, sorry, I have my screen currently extended right now, so let's look for another one. Let's see, screen center. Let's try that one. Okay, all right. So basically the desktop center should work as long as your screen right now is not extended. If you only have single screen, especially when you're connecting to the projector, since I'm using a laptop, I have my laptop right now connected to a second monitor. That's why it's extended. But the desktop center option should work for you. But I'll just use the screen center for now because it's not. Okay, let's run it. connection settings, it will display this one. Okay, so we'll place the code here for us to establish the connection, and then we'll just close it for now, and then for that. So for the cancel, just place here code close, and then sorry, I'm always used to saving every now and then, so I don't want to mess up, because when I was working with desktop before, when I don't have the UPS, once it turns off, I cannot save anything. So from time to time, always Alt if S, the shortcut for it. All right. Okay. Now let's try to. Okay, you have the data module ready. So what's the use of the data module? So later on, when we're going to use here the DB settings, will be. Let me center, or let me just resize this a little bit. Okay, that's better. Okay. So what's the use of the data module? So again, as I mentioned earlier, it's a container. It has a centralized container for all the connections that you have together with the data set. Now, who will use the data set? Well, any form or any unit within your project, if you're going to connect to the database, will probably need a data set. At the same time, that is where you're going to connect via the data module. So you need to access the data set via the data module. So let's say, for example, we want to set the settings of our MyCon. Remember MyCon? MyCon is the name of our connection to MySQL database. So we have created that here, this one. But since we are going to connect during runtime, we have to establish the connection, or the values rather, the properties of the connection during here. When we click the connect button, it will try to establish the connection. But before we can do that, we need to access or assign the values first. Whatever values we have typed here, we assign it to the properties of MyCon. Okay, I hope you understand that. Now, for us to address or access rather MyCon, we need to use the name of our data module, which was dm dot. Again, it's going to invoke an error, or it can't invoke the code completion due to an error. The same case, because we need again to link database settings and the data module. So you to do that is just simply click on use unit and the data module. And now once we delete the period and type again, we now have the MyCon. All right, so that is just very, very easy. But before I forget, we need to name these things first. Okay, so don't forget EDT server, EDT username, EDT password, EDT port, and then this is EDT database. All right, so I have actually established or created some few codes here. So okay, let's just copy this one. You can follow this one. You can pause. Let me assign this one to EDT database.text. Okay, so this part here, this code will be the one to establish the connection. So my connect. Now once we are connected, we should have some form of status. So where should we place that kind of status? Where do you want that to happen? Probably in the form. We'll probably have a status bar, no? We can probably add a status bar in the form. You can go to standard, Where is that? Status bar. Okay. The status bar place is within the form. So let me see. Let's see. Let me just try to adjust this one. This one. Alignment. None. It's just, we can adjust. Let me just do that. So normally the status bar should be at the bottom, followed by this one also at the bottom, and this one can do client for that so that it would fit. Well, what about this? We'll just remove this one then. There are too many panels. Let's just do that one, make it much more simple. How's that? Alright. Connect, cancel. This one, it would be let's where is the value that we can place here? Server status. Okay, so the server status, this will give us an idea whether we are connected or not once we are done, once we are able to do the connection. So from here, once it is connected, we can say that we are successfully connected. Okay, so let me just copy that code of mine, and then we can display the status. Okay, we can update the status panel. Okay, let me start this stat bar here. Stat bar. Stat server. Okay, let's try to do that. Stat server. Okay, before we do that, we need to do frm login dot. Okay, invoke the code completion. Since we still not linked the other way around, we need to use the form, login form. Okay, dot stat server dot simple text is equal to server status well, let's just do connected. Okay, so what happens if it's not connected? Well, here's what happens. We're going to capture any exceptions that's going to occur. So this is how exception handling, we implement some form of exception handling for Delphi. So if ever it's going to establish connection, an exception is going to be handled by the exception handler, try except. So it will display exception, message cannot connect to database, and then we are going to disconnected. Okay, I think that should be good. So let's see if we can establish connection. Okay, wait a minute. Where is the status? Simple text. Oh, I forgot to establish the panels. Sorry for that. I knew that one. Forgot. Yep, let's just say 200 for it. Probably the second panel 100 displays the username. Then this one, server status. Good. Okay, let me just update this. That panels 0 dot. Am I correct? Am I doing it right? Yep, we have it. Okay, we'll deal with the second panel just later. Okay. Server status. So the first server status should still be disconnected since we haven't established any connection. So right click panels editor. Server status should automatically be disconnected. Then once we run connection settings connected. So it should also close the form directly once you are able to do that. Then close. Yep, it will close automatically. Connect, close, then you can now log in. Good.